Billionaire Ethan Caldwell stood in his quiet kitchen at midnight, the hum of the giant fridge the only sound, when a soft clink broke the silence. He turned his head. A small hand slid out from behind the marble island, holding a spoon that trembled like a leaf in wind. He stepped closer and saw her, Sadie Miles, the maid's 10-year-old daughter, curled up on the floor with her back to the cabinets, knees pulled to her chest, eating cold rice and a single chicken wing from a plastic container. Her cheeks were wet, her eyes were wide. A tiny hiccup of fear left her throat when she noticed his shoes. The container lid slipped, rattled, and spun on the tile. Ethan's heart punched once against his chest. He expected anger to rise. It didn't. Instead, something older and heavier woke up inside him. Sadie's voice came out, a whisper. "Please don't tell, I'll put it back." He reached for the counter to steady himself because he had not planned to feel anything tonight. "Where are you watching from?" he asked softly, as if talking to the camera he imagined behind the air. "Tell me in the comments." He swallowed, meeting the child's eyes. "And listen, if you care about stories that change hearts, hit the like button right now." He crouched, the lights bright on the marble, and drew a slow breath that tasted like cold chicken and shame. "Sadie," he said, "who told you you can't eat?" Before she could answer, a hard voice cut through the hall like a blade. "What is going on in my kitchen?" Footsteps, sharp, fast. The door swung and Mrs. Porter, the housekeeper, stepped in with her night shawl, eyes hot and mean. She raised her hand toward the child, and Ethan stood up so fast his chair scraped. "Don't," he said. The word hung there, heavy as the night, then black. The clocks in Stonebridge Manor always ticked loudest after midnight. That was when Ethan did his rounds, not because he needed to, but because sleep came slow since the accident years ago. He liked the sound of the night guard's soft cough by the gate, the garden's motion, lights catching a moth in a white flash, the pool filter breathing like a giant asleep. He liked to pretend the house was alive and he was the keeper of its breathing. At 11:55, he came down from his office after reading a pile of documents he didn't care about. Numbers, sign-offs, signatures, things he used to chase the way boys chase kites. But tonight the pages had blurred. He had seen a photo on the corner of his desk that he hadn't moved in months. A little boy with big brown eyes and a toy car, a boy whose laugh still echoed in hallways that were too clean and too white. Ethan flipped the picture face down. He told himself not to think about 7 years ago. He went to the kitchen for water instead. The staff wing door was supposed to be closed after 10. It was a rule Mrs. Porter repeated like a verse from the Bible. No lingering, no noise, no children in the main house, no snacks outside approved hours. The pantry had a new heavy lock this month too. Ethan had noticed it but had not asked why, because he did not want to open a new fight with Mrs. Porter. She had worked for his family since before he was born. She knew where every switch was. She knew which supplier cheated on oranges and which plumber lied about leaks. He had allowed her to make rules because rules made the house predictable, and predictable felt safe. He had just set the crystal glass under the fridge spout when he heard that soft clink from the far side of the island. He froze, tilted his head, and waited. Another small sound, a spoon tapping plastic. He moved around the counter and looked down. There she was, Sadie. He knew her by the small pink shoelaces she always knotted too tight, and by the quiet way she followed her mother each Saturday when Laura came to help with linens on her day off. Sadie didn't talk much. She watched everything. She drew pictures in the staff lounge sometimes, houses with very big windows and tiny people inside waving to the sky. He had bought a pack of colored pencils and left them on the lounge table last month with no note. The next day he found a little thank you card that said, "For the colors," in careful letters. He had kept it in his drawer. "What are you eating?" he whispered now, as if they were hiding together. Sadie hugged the container. "Leftovers," she said. "I'm sorry, I'll be fast." "Did your mom say you could?" he asked. "She's sleeping," Sadie said, eyes dropping. "She had a bad cough." She took another bite and winced when a grain of rice stuck to her lip. She wiped it with the back of her hand, the same hand that was marked with thin red lines like she had scratched herself too hard. Ethan noticed. He also noticed the way her other hand shook. He squatted to be at her height. "Are you hungry every night?" She nodded once. "Why didn't you ask?" She swallowed. "We're not allowed to. Mrs. Porter said the fridge is for the big house. The staff kitchen is for staff only, and kids are not staff." Ethan looked at the staff door. He had signed off on a monthly food budget that was more than most families spent in 3 months. He had assumed the staff ate well because the receipts were high and the chef's orders were always long. He had never stepped into the staff kitchen after hours. He had never checked the pantry lock or counted the tomatoes. He felt a heat in his chest that wasn't anger but felt close. "Who told you to hide on the floor?" "Mrs. Porter," Sadie whispered. "She said if I stand up and someone sees me, I'll get Mom fired, so I sit." He stared at the girl on the cold tile and thought about all the rooms upstairs with sofas no one sat on. He thought about the big fruit bowl he always told the chef to keep full for guests who never came. He thought about the casserole half covered on the top shelf of the fridge. He also thought about Laura, Sadie's mom, thin as a reed these days, moving slower, coughing into the crook of her elbow. He had told himself Laura needed rest and that Mrs. Porter would handle it. He had told himself that money in an envelope sent home every 2 weeks was help enough. He had told himself many things that let him sleep, but he did not sleep. He stood to get the casserole. That was when the door shot open and Mrs. Porter appeared, hair net twisted like a crown, mouth already forming a scold. "You," she snapped, pointing at the child. "How dare?" Ethan turned his head and the rest of her sentence died. She shrank a little, then straightened again because pride kicked her forward. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, voice smoother now, "I didn't know you were." "Put your hand down," he said, not loud but final. He reached into the fridge and took the casserole out. He set it on the counter and peeled the foil. Steam carried a day-old smell of rosemary and butter. He found a clean plate, spooned out food, and warmed it in the microwave. The pause between beeps felt like a drum. "Mrs. Porter looked from plate to child to man, lips pressed. "Sir, rules." "Who wrote them?" Ethan asked without looking at her. She swallowed. "They came from the office, from you." He took the plate out and set it on the island. He grabbed a fork. He put the plate on the floor by Sadie's knees as if it were normal to do such a thing. "Eat," he said gently. "It's hot. Blow first." Sadie blinked, tears threatening, then obeyed. She blew on a piece of chicken as if blowing on a birthday candle you don't quite believe is yours. She chewed, a sound like a sob and a laugh mixed in her throat. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan finally looked at Mrs. Porter. Why is a child hiding to eat leftovers? Mrs. Porter's chin lifted. Because a house has order, because if children run through kitchens and open fridges at midnight, we have chaos. Because if one child eats from the main fridge, all will try. And this is not a shelter, it is a home, your home. "Do the staff eat enough?" he asked. "They have what they need," she said quickly. "We portion, we plan, we keep waste low." "How low?" he asked. "So low that you lock the pantry and send a coughing woman to bed without food for her child." Her eyes flashed. Laura was told to rest. She wastes food. She forgets her shifts. She is sick, and sick people need rules most of all. "She is sick," he said. "That's the only true thing you have said in the last minute." His voice surprised even him. It came out like a door slamming softly, firm, final, not angry but not kind. He looked at Sadie's face, the way the fork finally stilled in her hand because she was listening hard to grown-ups make sounds that might change her life. "Go check on your mother," he told Mrs. Porter. "Tell her I'm coming." Mrs. Porter hesitated. "Sir, at this hour." "At this hour," he said, "I want to see the person who keeps my house clean and my sheets folded." Mrs. Porter's mouth flattened. She turned slow and left the kitchen. Ethan waited until the footsteps faded. He sat on the floor across from Sadie, his back to the island as if they were two campers by a tiny fire. "How long have you been hungry at night?" he asked. She thought, children always tell time by events, not minutes. Since Mom started getting dizzy, sometimes she coughs so hard she can't stand up. She says to save money, so I eat at school and I try not to at night. "Has anyone taken your mom to a doctor?" he asked, keeping his voice calm. "Mrs. Porter said the clinic costs too much," Sadie said. "She gave Mom a tea that tastes like burnt leaves. Mom drinks it and sleeps." She looked up. "Is Mom in trouble?" Ethan shook his head. "No." "Am I in trouble?" she asked. He shook his head again. "No." She stared at him longer as if weighing whether the word no meant what it should. Then she took another bite. He stood, went to the cupboard and pulled a bowl. He poured water, added a little salt, then washed an apple and sliced it, placing the bright pieces around the plate like a flower if a flower were edible. He did not know why he did it except that he wanted this moment to feel safe. He set the apple plate between them. Sadie smiled without meaning to and took a slice. For a second he saw a different child, not the one that hid, but the one that should have been running in a backyard somewhere with grass stains on her knees. "Do you draw?" he asked after a bit. "A lot," she said around apple. "I draw houses with big windows like yours and a kitchen with 2 fridges. One is for kids." He laughed despite himself, then caught the sound and tucked it back, embarrassed by the echo of it in the big room. "Maybe we can draw a new plan for this house," he said. "One where rules remember people." Sadie nodded like he had suggested ice cream. Mrs. Porter returned with a stiff look. "Laura is awake," she said. "She says she can see you." The tone suggested she did not approve. Ethan rose. Good, he said. He looked down at Sadie. Bring your plate, you can finish while we talk to your mom. Sir, Mrs. Porter started. Food in the staff hall. Is where people are, he said, and people need food. They walked down the long corridor that always smelled like lemon oil and soap. Sadie's small sneakers made soft squeaks on the gleaming wood. Ethan noticed scuffed places near the baseboards where carts had bumped and someone had hastily painted over scratches. He noticed how the staff doors were all the same dull beige, while the main house doors upstairs were rich and carved. He suddenly hated the beige. In Laura's small room, the light was low. The thin woman sat on the edge of the bed, hair tied back, a scarf around her neck even though the room was warm. She tried to stand when she saw Ethan, but a cough folded her in half. Sadie rushed forward and put the plate on the bedside table and patted her mother's back in quick little circles. I'm okay, Laura said when she caught breath, though her voice was sand. Mr. Caldwell, You need a doctor, he said gently, but in a tone that left no argument. Laura's eyes flew to Mrs. Porter, then back to him. I can't pay, she said. I'm sorry about Sadie in the kitchen. She was wrong, I told her. She wasn't wrong, Ethan said. A child eating is never wrong. Laura's face crumpled like paper. She covered her mouth to keep more cough or a sob inside, he could not tell which. He pulled the only extra chair closer and sat. How long have you been coughing like this? He asked. Laura looked at her hands. Months, she said. It's worse at night. I get dizzy. I can't climb the big stairs without stopping. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, though he already knew the answer. People like him were doors with guards, not people you confessed weakness to. Laura glanced at Mrs. Porter again. We were told to keep personal matters away from the main house, she said softly, and I didn't want to lose this job. You won't, he said. Tomorrow morning I will call Dr. Nolan to come here. We will run tests, we will find out what this is, and we will make a plan. He looked at Sadie. And until then you eat in any kitchen you like, is that clear? Sadie nodded so hard a curl fell across her forehead. She pushed it back with sticky fingers. Mrs. Porter shifted, arms crossed. Forgive me, sir, but you are changing rules at midnight because of a story a child told on your floor. I am, he said, and I am also changing who decides rules. He stood. From now on, any rule that touches a child or a sick person comes to me first. He stepped closer so the words would land. And if I find out someone has been keeping food from staff or their families, they will not work in this house another day. Mrs. Porter's face did not move, but her throat did, a swallow that looked like pride restraining fear. Understood, she said. He turned back to Laura. What else haven't we seen? He asked. Laura hesitated, then spoke fast, as if fear would catch the words and snatch them back if she did not hurry. We share 3 lockers for 9 people, she said. We asked for more, but the order never came. The staff lounge heater is broken. The night shift sometimes misses dinner because the food is gone by the time they get there. The pantry was locked last month. We were told it was to stop waste. Ethan looked at Mrs. Porter. She lifted her chin. We had theft, she said. Items went missing. What items? He asked. Sugar, oil, bread, things that are easy to hide. Did you ask why people were taking them? He asked. To steal is to steal, she said, gaze steady. Reasons make thieves think they are good. He felt something inside him tilt. Reasons make leaders fix what is broken, he said. Laura's hand fluttered, half apology, half warning. Please don't fight, she whispered. I don't want trouble. You're not making trouble, Ethan told her. You're telling the truth. That's the opposite of trouble. He softened his voice. When was your last full meal? Laura's eyes dropped. She didn't answer. Sadie spoke instead, brave in the way children are when the room feels almost safe. Mom gives me her food when I say I'm full, she said. But I'm not full, I just don't want her to be hungry. Laura's shoulders shook once. She covered her face so her daughter wouldn't see. Ethan's jaw tightened. He wanted to fix everything right now tonight with a snap. But people are not pipes you can tighten with a wrench. He knew that. Still, he could start. Jonah is on gate duty, he said. He'll drive you to the clinic first thing at 6. I'll call ahead. Sadie, you'll come with me to the main house after we finish here. I'll set up the guest room across from the library for you and your mom for a few days until we sort this out. Mrs. Porter started. Sir, the guest rooms are for guests, he said, and I'm inviting them. He crouched so he was eye level with Sadie again. Do you have school tomorrow? She nodded. We'll make sure you get there on time, he said. Do you like oatmeal? She nodded again, quicker. Good, he said. Chef Rita makes the best oatmeal in the city. She does something with cinnamon I don't understand. He smiled, small. We'll ask her to make extra in the morning. A shape moved in the doorway. Chef Rita herself, hair wrapped in a scarf, had come, drawn by voices and the scent of reheated rosemary. I heard my name, she said with a soft laugh, and I heard the word cinnamon. She took in the scene fast, eyes kind, mind working. I can fix tea with honey for that cough, she told Laura. It won't heal you, but it will soothe, and I can bring toast. Laura nodded, grateful and tired. Rita disappeared and returned with a tray like a stage magician. Somehow comfort felt heavier in the air when warm bread entered the room. Sadie ate another bite, her shoulders lowered. The world, for one small minute, made a little bit of sense. Ethan turned to Mrs. Porter. Tomorrow, he said evenly, I want a report on the staff meals, not receipts. A list of actual plates served and to whom morning and evening for the last 2 weeks. I want a list of items that went missing and the dates. I want the name of the person who decided to lock the pantry. Mrs. Porter's eyes flicked to the floor. It was my decision, she said. Then own it in writing, he replied, and be ready to explain your reasons to me at 9. She dipped her head, yes, sir. He looked back at Sadie and Laura. He softened again. You both will sleep in the big house tonight, he said. It's warmer and safer. Laura opened her mouth to protest. He lifted a hand. No argument, he said, but the word carried care, not command. They moved as a small group down the hallway again. At the door to the main wing, Mrs. Porter paused, as if invisible lines were drawn across the floor and stepping over them would rearrange the map of the house forever. Ethan put his hand on the sensor and the door clicked. He opened it and stood aside for Laura and Sadie to pass. It was a small act, but Mrs. Porter watched it like a ceremony. The beige hallway ended and Richwood began. In the guest room, the lamps made warm puddles of yellow. The bed looked like a white cloud someone had forgot to hang in the sky. Sadie's eyes widened and she put both hands to her stomach as if the beauty might fall right through her. Laura touched the bedspread with careful fingers, like you touch something that doesn't belong to you but wants to. Rest, Ethan said. The doctor will come early. He started to leave but stopped at the door. Something pulled at him, the same something that had made him slice an apple at midnight. He turned back. Sadie, he said, do you want the night light on or off? She thought about it, then said, on, please. Good choice, he said. It keeps shadows from lying. He said it lightly, but his throat tightened over the last word because he had lived with shadows that lied about many things. He walked out into the hall with Mrs. Porter. They stopped near the library where the old clock ticked its blunt, honest ticks. He looked at the woman who had run his house like a ship and whose rules had made sense until they didn't. Mrs. Porter, he said, I need you to hear me. I don't hate rules, but the point of rules is people. If a rule hurts a child, it is a bad rule. If a rule starves a worker, it is a bad rule. If a rule keeps a sick woman from asking for help, it is a bad rule. Do you understand me? She held his gaze a long time. When she answered, her voice was smaller than he had ever heard it. Yes, sir, she said. Good, he said. Go sleep. We have a long day in the morning. She went. He stood alone and listened to the house breathe. He should have gone to bed, but he walked to the security room. The night guard, Jonah, straightened when he entered. Everything okay, sir? Jonah asked. Show me cameras for the staff kitchen last 2 weeks, Ethan said. Jonah clicked, screens lit up. Ethan watched on fast forward as trays went out, as plates came back in, as the clock spun. He watched Laura pause at the pantry door and then turn away. He watched Mrs. Porter check shelves and make notes. He watched Sadie's small shape cross the frame only twice, once to put a note on the lounge table for the colors, and once to stand at the edge of the kitchen like a stray cat deciding if the porch is safe. He paused the video. He rewound. He slowed. There 2 nights ago. Late, Mrs. Porter and one more person in the staff kitchen, an older man from procurement, bags on the table, items moving fast. Ethan leaned forward. The man slid sugar and oil into a crate marked garden shed. Mrs. Porter wrote something in a small black notebook. They locked the pantry. They left. What's in the garden shed? Ethan asked, voice very quiet. Old tools, Jonah said, and deliveries before they're checked in. Who checks them? Ethan asked. Mrs. Porter does, Jonah said. Ethan's mouth went dry. He looked at the paused frame again. The crate sat in the corner, half hidden by a mop bucket, label crooked. The camera view did not include the shed. He stood up. Give me the spare key to the shed, he said. Jonah reached into a drawer and handed him a ring. Ethan walked out into the night alone. The garden smelled like wet earth and the ghost of rosemary. The shed door creaked. He clicked on the light, dust motes swam in the beam. On the second shelf behind a crate of broken hoses he found 3 small boxes marked with dates. He opened the first, sugar, oil, flour, the kind of things that go missing quietly. He opened the second, canned fish, tea, jarred fruit. He opened the third. Medicine samples with clinic stickers and a pamphlet about lung care with a doctor's number circled. His breath went short. He closed the lids one by one as if each were a secret he needed to keep from blowing away. The gravel crunched behind him. He turned. A shadow leaned in the doorway, tall and rigid. Mrs. Porter. She had followed him, silent as the night, eyes bright under the bare bulb, in her right hand the small black notebook. "Looking for something, sir?" she asked. He held up the box of medicine. "Yes," he said, "I think I found it." Her gaze flicked to the box, then back to his face. "You shouldn't be out here alone," she said. "It's late." "The truth doesn't keep office hours," he replied. Rita placed a hand on Sadie's shoulder and led her away. "Come on, sweetheart, let's go help your mom." When the door closed, Ethan pulled out his phone and dialed Charles Rayner. The call rang twice before a cheerful voice answered. "Good morning, sir. Early day, huh?" Ethan's tone was flat. "Where are you?" "On the way to the port office, sir. Deliveries from the Southern Depot." "I see," Ethan said. "Did Mrs. Porter contact you last night?" A pause. "Mrs. Porter, no, sir. Should she have?" Ethan listened to the small hesitation at the end of his sentence that tremor people have when they lie about something too specific. "If she does," Ethan said, "tell her to come see me immediately. No calls, no messages, face to face." Charles cleared his throat. "Understood." Ethan ended the call and stared at the phone. His gut told him Mrs. Porter had already called him. An hour later, the doctor arrived. Dr. Nolan, a tall man with kind eyes behind thick glasses, examined Laura carefully in the guest room while Ethan and Sadie waited outside. Sadie sat on the carpet, sketching something with crayons Rita had brought her. "What are you drawing?" Ethan asked, crouching beside her. She showed him the page. It was a picture of the big house, colored in soft browns and yellows. At the front gate stood 3 small stick figures, one labeled me, one Mom, and one Mr. E. On the top corner, near a cloud, she had drawn a 4th tiny shape holding a bag. "That's Mrs. Porter," she explained. "She's leaving." He nodded, surprised at how accurate the drawing felt. Dr. Nolan stepped out a few minutes later, clipboard in hand. "It's not good," he said quietly. "She has late-stage lung infection, possibly worsened by untreated pneumonia. She needs proper medication, not herbs, and rest." Ethan felt his chest tight. "Is it curable?" "With care and treatment, yes," Nolan said, "but time is precious. We can't delay." Ethan nodded. "She'll get everything she needs." The doctor smiled faintly. "You're doing the right thing, Mr. Caldwell. But she'll also need emotional stability. The child's stress is making her worse. Keep them close." Ethan glanced at Sadie, who was still coloring the sun a little too bright. "I will," he said. Later that day, Ethan called a private investigator named Calvin Reese, a quiet man known for results. "Find Mrs. Porter," Ethan said over the phone. "She's driving a black SUV, license 4B203. She has something that belongs to me, a black leather notebook. I want her location by tonight." Calvin's tone was steady. "Consider it done." Ethan hung up and leaned back. For years, he had thought control meant locking doors, setting rules, keeping distance. Now, control meant facing the very people he had trusted most. By evening, news came back. Calvin's message arrived with coordinates and a single photo. Mrs. Porter's car parked beside an old warehouse near the edge of town where Caldwell Industries used to store unused equipment years ago. The picture showed her stepping out, holding a small black bag. Ethan didn't wait for backup. He drove himself, the road cutting through the fading light, his thoughts racing faster than the car. The warehouse stood like a sleeping beast, rusted walls, broken glass, weeds creeping up the sides. The huge sign reading Caldwell Supplies hung crooked, half the letters missing. He parked a short distance away and walked quietly through the open gate. Inside, the air smelled of dust and forgotten years. He heard voices. He followed the sound until he reached a half-lit corner where Mrs. Porter stood with Charles Rayner. They were speaking in hushed tones. Ethan stepped behind a row of crates and listened. "He suspects," Mrs. Porter was saying, her voice sharp. "He found the shed, he saw the boxes." Charles cursed under his breath. "You said you burned the records." "I kept one copy," she hissed, "for insurance, but now he knows. We need to move it all before he digs deeper." Charles shook his head. "It's too late. You shouldn't have gone back to the house." "I had to," she said. "That woman's sickness is making everyone soft. Once he finds out about the shipments." She stopped suddenly. Charles looked at her. "About what shipments?" Ethan thought. "Keep talking." Charles grabbed her arm. "Don't say it here," he warned. "You never know who's listening." Mrs. Porter pulled free. "You think I care now? I've kept your name clean for years while you signed fake invoices. You took extra supplies every month and shared profit with me, remember? Half for you, half for me." Ethan's heart dropped. He gripped the crate edge tighter. Charles's voice dropped to a hiss. "Keep your voice down. You think confessing will save you? We're both in this." Ethan stepped out before he could stop himself. Yes, you are, he said. His voice filled the room like thunder. They both spun around. Mrs. Porter went pale. Charles froze. Mr. Caldwell, sir, I can explain. Don't bother, Ethan said. I heard enough. He walked forward slowly. You stole from my staff, you stole from me, and you used the name of my company to sell stolen goods. Charles raised his hands. It wasn't like that. We were just redirecting extra supplies. You said we should cut waste. Cut waste, Ethan repeated, his voice rising. You call people's food waste. Mrs. Porter stepped in front of Charles. You made this easy for him, she snapped. You never asked questions, you never looked at numbers, you wanted quiet, I gave it to you. I managed everything while you sat in your office drinking guilt and calling it leadership. Ethan stared at her, and for a moment he almost believed she thought she was right. You turned my silence into power, he said, and you used it to hurt people who couldn't fight back. Charles took a step toward him. Listen, sir, this doesn't have to go public, we can fix it internally. We'll resign, disappear. Ethan cut him off. You think I'm protecting your image, I'm protecting those you robbed. He pulled out his phone and hit record. Say it, he ordered. Say what you did. Charles's face drained. Sir, please, say it, Ethan repeated. Mrs. Porter laughed bitterly. Fine, she said. We sold the supplies every month, food, oil, medicine, anything that could bring cash. We used the extra stock receipts to hide it. Charles handled the buyers, I handled the records. You want the truth? The money paid for keeping this house perfect the way you wanted it. Clean, quiet, controlled. Ethan's hand trembled, but his voice stayed calm. And the medicine you took from Laura's drawer, Mrs. Porter hesitated. That wasn't for sale. Charles turned sharply toward her. What? It wasn't for sale, she repeated quietly. It was meant for someone else. Ethan stepped closer. Who? Mrs. Porter looked at him with eyes that suddenly weren't angry but sad. For the woman who ordered the first shipment of that medicine 6 years ago, your wife. The words hit him like a blow. What did you say? He whispered. Mrs. Porter's lips trembled. Your wife Clara Caldwell was being treated for a lung condition before the accident. Those medicines came through the same supplier. After she died, Charles kept the contracts. We just changed names, you never canceled them. Ethan's breath caught. That's impossible. The doctors said she was healthy. She died in a car crash. Charles looked down. She was sick, sir. She was driving to meet a doctor the night it happened. Ethan's world tilted. The walls of the warehouse seemed to move. You're lying, he said softly. Mrs. Porter shook her head. No, it's all in that notebook. The last page, the one marked special deliveries. That medicine was hers. After she died, I couldn't throw it away. I thought maybe one day I'd need it again for someone else. He felt his knees weaken. All these years, the emptiness he felt hadn't just been grief, it had been ignorance. He never knew his wife had been sick. He had built his life on half-truths, and now the missing half was tearing through him. He took a step back, his hand covering his mouth. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Why didn't anyone tell me? Mrs. Porter whispered, because she didn't want you to know. She said you were already drowning in work. She said she didn't want pity. Ethan stared at the dusty floor. Clara's voice came back to him, faint from years ago. I'm just tired, Ethan, don't worry so much. He had believed her, as he always did. He had believed silence was strength. Charles moved first, reaching for the exit. We're done here, he muttered. We all made mistakes. Ethan snapped back. You're not going anywhere. He pulled out his phone and called Jonah. Get police to the old warehouse near the port, he ordered. 2 suspects, embezzlement and fraud. Charles's face went white. You're really going to ruin me? Ethan looked at him, eyes steady. You did that yourself. Minutes later, sirens wailed in the distance. Mrs. Porter stood still, tears streaking her face while Charles tried to hide behind excuses that fell apart in the air. When the police arrived, Ethan handed them the phone recording and the open boxes of goods. Mrs. Porter didn't resist when they took her hand, but as she passed Ethan, she said softly, You still don't see it, do you? Your wife wasn't the only one hiding the truth. Then she was gone, her voice echoing in his mind long after the car left. Back at the mansion, the afternoon sun painted the walls gold, but it felt hollow. Ethan sat beside Laura's bed again, watching the rise and fall of her chest as she slept after her medicine. Sadie sat near the window, whispering to her doll. The house was quiet, but not the kind of quiet he used to love. It was a quiet that waited for something more. When Laura woke, she looked stronger. Dr. Nolan said I'll recover, she murmured. I don't know how to thank you, Ethan smiled faintly. You already did, he said. You showed me what was wrong. She frowned slightly. Mrs. Porter, gone, he said softly, but she left behind a lot we have to fix. Sadie climbed onto the bed beside her mother, curling into her side. Mom, she said, Mr. E helped us. Laura smiled weakly. Then we pray for him tonight. Ethan blinked at her in surprise. Pray for me? Yes, she said simply. You look like someone who carries too much in his heart. He laughed softly, though it sounded tired. Maybe I do. That night he walked alone through the hallways. Every sound echoed, the ticking clocks, the whisper of air vents, the faint hum of the refrigerator that once hid a hungry child. He reached his wife's old study, a room he hadn't entered in years. The light switch clicked, revealing dust dancing in the air. On the table lay a sealed box marked personal. He hesitated, then opened it. Inside were letters, Clara's handwriting, neat and looping. The first one began, "If you ever find this, Ethan, it means I didn't get to tell you the truth myself." His fingers trembled. He read on. "I'm sick, my love. It's not deadly, but it makes me weak. I didn't want you to stop living your dream because of me. If you're reading this, please remember, take care of the people who serve you. They see parts of you that no one else does." Tears blurred the words. He sat there, the letter in his lap, feeling time fold in on itself. His wife had known. She had seen what he was becoming, a man locked behind walls of wealth. He looked up at the portrait above the fireplace, her smiling face forever young, and whispered, "I'm sorry, I see it now." Just then his phone buzzed. It was Calvin Reese. "Sir," Calvin said, voice tight, "you might want to sit down." "What is it?" Before she was taken in, Mrs. Porter made one more call to someone outside the city. "A man named Richard Coleman. He's on your company board." Ethan frowned. "Richard, he's been with my father before me." "Exactly," Calvin said. She said one sentence before the line cut. "Tell him it wasn't an accident." Ethan froze. "The car crash?" "Yes, sir." The line went silent for a second. Ethan whispered, "Find out everything." He ended the call slowly. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air heavier. The story he thought had ended years ago was just beginning to open again. Somewhere in the dark corners of his own empire, truth waited, ugly, sharp, and unfinished. He looked out the window where the city lights shimmered like restless stars. Downstairs, Sadie's laughter floated faintly through the hall as Rita told her a bedtime story. For the first time in years, a sound like that lived in the house. Ethan smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "This house has kept too many secrets," he whispered. "Tomorrow, we tear them all open." But outside, at the far edge of the property, a car engine idled quietly in the dark. A man in a suit sat behind the wheel, speaking into a phone. "He knows," the man said. "Caldwell's digging." A low voice answered from the other end, calm and cold. "Then it's time we remind him why silence was better." The car lights flicked off and disappeared into the night, leaving behind the faint smell of smoke and the beginning of a new storm that none of them were ready for. The next morning rose heavy and gray, the sky over Stonebridge Hill thick with slow-moving clouds that looked like smoke trapped above the earth. Ethan Caldwell woke before dawn, unable to rest after the call from Calvin Reese the night before. "Tell him it wasn't an accident." Those words spun in his head over and over until they no longer sounded like words but thunder. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, watching rain begin to fall softly on the driveway. In the reflection of the glass, his own eyes looked older, sharper, like a man waking up from a long sleep he never realized he'd been in. Somewhere in the guest room below, Laura was coughing again. The sound made him turn away from the window. He couldn't change the past, but he could change the house that still stood. By 7 o'clock, the mansion was alive. Workers moved quietly through the corridors, unsure whether to greet him or hide their eyes. News of Mrs. Porter's arrest had spread quickly, mixed with rumors about stolen supplies, police vans, and whispers of a bigger secret. Chef Rita was in the kitchen, humming nervously while stirring oatmeal for Sadie, who sat on the counter swinging her legs. When Ethan entered, everyone froze. "Good morning," he said simply. His voice wasn't angry or cold, it carried something new, something human. Rita smiled first, relief softening her face. "Good morning, sir. Sadie was just telling me about her drawing." Sadie held up her paper proudly. It showed a giant sun over a smaller version of the mansion with stick people smiling in front of it. "That's us," she said, "and that's Mom. She's not coughing anymore in this one." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then that's the one we'll make real." He poured himself coffee and looked at the people who kept his house running, faces he had once passed without seeing. "From today," he said, "we start fresh. No more fear, no more silence. Every person here will be treated with respect." He paused and added quietly, "I lost sight of what mattered and I'm sorry." The room went silent for a moment, then a few heads nodded. Chef Rita wiped her eyes quickly with her apron. "Thank you, sir," she said. Ethan turned to Sadie. "Eat your breakfast, champ." "You've got a big day. Why?" she asked through a mouthful of oatmeal. "Because," he said, smiling, "we have work to do together." After breakfast, he called Calvin again. "What did you find about Richard Coleman?" Calvin's tone was grave. "You were right to be suspicious. He was the one who signed off the falsified medical shipments 6 years ago. The same supplier that handled your wife's medicine handled shipments to multiple fake charities under your company's name. Money was redirected to offshore accounts, some in his name, some hidden behind shell companies. And one of the cars registered under those accounts belonged to the driver in your wife's accident." Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. "The driver? Yes, he disappeared after the crash, but records show he was paid a large sum 2 weeks before the accident." Ethan's voice dropped. "You're saying someone paid him to cause it?" "It looks that way," Calvin said. "And the last person to contact him was Richard Coleman." The world seemed to tilt again. Ethan walked to the window, staring at the storm building outside. "I trusted that man with everything," he whispered. "He sat at my table after my wife's funeral," Calvin said quietly. "He might have wanted your company more than your friendship." Ethan ended the call. his mind already spinning with what to do next. He drove into the city later that morning, leaving Jonah to watch over the house. The Caldwell Industries building rose like a silver spear above the skyline, its logo shining against the gray clouds. The receptionist greeted him nervously. No one had seen him this early in years. He walked straight to the boardroom, where the monthly meeting was already in session. Richard Coleman sat at the head of the table, a man in his late 50s with silver hair, smooth voice, and the confident air of someone who had never been questioned. When Ethan entered, the room fell silent. "Gentlemen," Ethan said, setting a black folder on the table, "I think it's time we talk about what's really been happening in this company." Richard smiled politely. "Ethan, we didn't expect you today. Everything's under control, is it?" Ethan interrupted. He opened the folder and spread out printed copies of the shipment records Calvin had sent. "These are invoices from our medical supply division, signed by you, authorized under fake charity accounts, funds diverted to shell companies. Care to explain?" Richard's face remained calm, but a faint muscle in his jaw twitched. "Those are routine redirections, tax restructuring. You know how accounting works." Ethan slammed his hand on the table. "Don't lie to me." His voice cracked through the room like lightning. "You paid the man who drove my wife off the road, didn't you?" Gasps rippled through the board members. Richard leaned back slowly. "You're grieving again," he said softly. "I understand, but that was an accident. Your wife was ill, you said so yourself." Ethan stepped closer, his eyes burning. "She was sick, yes, but not dying. You used her condition to steal her medicine contracts and cover up your fraud." Richard's face hardened. "Careful, Ethan, words like that can destroy reputations." "Then let them," Ethan said coldly, "because I have evidence." He placed a small recorder on the table and pressed play. Mrs. Porter's voice filled the room. "We sold the supplies. Charles handled the buyers. The medicine was for his wife. He never canceled the contracts." For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the rain tapping against the glass. Richard's smile cracked. "You recorded her?" "Yes," Ethan said, "and she told me everything." Richard stood, his calm gone. "You think you can ruin me with one recording? I built this company with your father. You're nothing without us." Ethan looked at him steadily. "Then I'll rebuild it without you." Security guards entered on cue. Calvin had arranged it beforehand. Richard's eyes widened. "You brought them here?" "Yes," Ethan said. "You're under investigation for fraud and conspiracy." Richard tried to move toward the exit, but the guards blocked him. "You don't know what you're doing," Richard spat. "If I go down, you go with me. You signed those early contracts too." Ethan's expression didn't change. "Then I'll face my share of the truth. That's what real leadership is." Richard froze, realizing the man he used to control was no longer afraid. As the guards escorted him out, he shouted, "You'll regret this. You'll lose everything." Ethan whispered, "I already did once. This time I'm not losing what's left." After the board meeting, reporters swarmed the building. Ethan gave a short statement. "We discovered misuse of company funds. Justice will take its course. No one is above accountability, not even those we trust." The headlines that evening read, "Billionaire Ethan Caldwell exposes fraud inside his own empire." But he didn't read the articles. He drove straight home. The rain had stopped, leaving the air cool and clean. As he pulled into the driveway, he saw Sadie sitting on the front steps with a sketchpad on her lap. She waved when she saw him. "You look tired," she said honestly. He laughed softly. "I am, but it's a good tired." She squinted at him. "Did you fix the bad people?" He nodded. "I think so." "Good," she said. "Mom prayed that you would." Inside, Laura was waiting in the living room, a blanket over her legs, color slowly returning to her cheeks. "I heard what happened on the news," she said quietly. "You did the right thing," Ethan sighed. "The truth hurts, but maybe it's the only thing that heals." She smiled faintly. "You sound like my pastor," he chuckled. "Maybe he's smarter than I thought." As evening settled, he joined Sadie in the dining room. She was teaching Chef Rita how to draw a sun with a smiley face. "You know," he said, "this house used to be so quiet it scared even me." Sadie looked up. "It's not quiet now." "No," he said softly, "now it's alive." He reached out and adjusted her paper. "What's that?" "A picnic," she said, "for everyone, even the guards. Mom says happy hearts make better work." He smiled. "Then we'll have one this weekend." Rita laughed. "In this weather." "Rain or shine," he said. That night, after Sadie was asleep, Ethan walked out to the garden where the air smelled of wet grass. He stopped by the shed that had started it all. It was empty now, cleaned and repainted. But he could still see the ghost of that night, the trembling light, the lies, the child who just wanted food. He whispered to the dark, "Thank you, Sadie, you changed everything." He looked up at the stars peeking through thinning clouds. In the distance, the city lights flickered like candles. For the first time in years, he felt peace not because the past was fixed, but because the truth was no longer hiding. He remembered Clara's letter, the one that said, "Take care of the people who serve you." He smiled sadly. "I will," he said softly. "I finally understand." The following weekend, the garden was transformed. Tables were set under white tents, laughter filled the air, music played softly. The staff and their families gathered, unsure at first, then slowly relaxing as Ethan moved among them not as their boss but as one of them. He helped Jonah carry trays, clumsily tried to serve jollof rice, and laughed when Sadie scolded him for spilling juice. Laura sat nearby, wrapped in a shawl, smiling wider than anyone had ever seen her. "You know," she told Rita, "I think this house is finally breathing again." Rita nodded, "because the master's heart is open." Ethan raised a glass. "To new beginnings," he said, "to the people who remind us what matters." Cheers erupted. Sadie lifted her cup of juice high, shouting, "To leftovers that started everything." Everyone laughed, and for a moment, even the air seemed to laugh with them. As night fell, fairy lights blinked across the garden. Ethan stood alone by the fountain, the reflection of lights dancing on the water. Laura joined him quietly. "You've changed," she said. "Maybe," he answered. "Or maybe I just remembered who I was before all the money," she smiled. "You found something richer than gold." "What's that?" he asked. "Peace," she said. He looked at her and then at the little girl chasing fireflies across the grass. "And family," he added softly. Laura nodded, her eyes glistening. "You gave us hope, we gave you home, fair trade." Suddenly, a breeze lifted through the trees, carrying a faint scent of roses. He closed his eyes, and for a moment he could almost hear Clara's laugh again. In that whisper of air, she felt close, not haunting him, but freeing him. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, he sat at his desk and opened a new notebook. At the top of the first page, he wrote in slow, steady handwriting, "House rules." Underneath, he listed 3 lines. 1. No one goes hungry here. 2. No one suffers in silence. 3. No truth stays buried. He closed the book, smiling faintly. The clocks in the mansion ticked softly around him, not as reminders of emptiness, but of time still worth living. Outside, the lights of the city blinked like tiny promises. Inside, in a guest room that no longer felt temporary, Sadie whispered sleepily, "Mom, do you think he'll be okay now?" Laura stroked her hair. "Yes, baby, he's finally free." And downstairs, Ethan Caldwell, the billionaire who once thought kindness was weakness, sat alone for a moment, letting tears fall quietly down his face, not from sorrow but gratitude. Because in a world where he could buy everything, it took a hungry child's courage to give him something money could never buy, a new heart. As the rain began again outside, he looked toward the heavens and whispered, "Thank you." Then he turned off the lamp, and for the first time in years, the house slept in peace. Sparkles, where are you watching from today? Drop your city and country in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to this channel to support our growth and keep watching more life-changing stories.